Fox 2 presents Hancock and Kelley.
A good Sunday morning to you. Welcome to Hancock and Kelley on Fox 2, where we take on the top issues of the week. On the right is John Hancock.
Good morning.
And on the left is Michael Kelley.
Good morning.
I'm Andy Banker, and on the agenda this morning, President Biden talks in circles about balloons. Did he order American balloons to be taken out by mistake? After possibly bungling a toxic train derailment and environmental disaster in Ohio, the EPA tells people to trust your government. Embattled St. Louis prosecutor, Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner, goes network after helping a man who spent decades in prison for a murder he did not commit. And in our quote of the week, St. Louis aldermen look to use the NFL settlement money to correct historic wrongs. They're not talking about football. We begin with President Biden trying to make sense of the nation's new policy, or lack thereof, on shooting down balloons. The U.S. has taken out 4 balloons in the past few weeks. The last 3 may have been from the United States.
The intelligence community's current assessment is that these 3 objects were most likely balloons tied to private companies, recreation or research institutions studying weather or conducting other scientific research.
He says the U.S. military took them out because of hazards to civilian air traffic, potentially, and because the U.S. military could not rule out the possibility that they were spying on what the president calls sensitive facilities. Now, this comes after a massive balloon from China was allowed to hover above multiple sensitive facilities as across the United States. Pentagon officials say with certainty that China was using that balloon to spy on the United States. There's word the military tried to shoot it down over Montana but failed, and then waited till it reached the Atlantic Ocean to take it out. John, does anyone really know what's going on here, and should we believe the president?
Well, wow, that's a 2-part question. One part, no. I don't think we really know what's going on. And part 2, I'm not so sure we should believe the president. I mean, you would think they would know more about these things before just willy-nilly sending a plane to shoot them down. I was very nervous about my Happy Valentine's Day balloon this year, taking it out of the car. You hope the government's being honest with us. You want to believe the government's being honest with us. The China balloon's a real problem. And, you've got this situation now with China that we don't know exactly what they're up to. The communication between our 2 countries has been minimized. Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, canceled his trip to China in wake of this balloon. And I think, the bilateral relationship there between the U.S. and China is probably, in spite of everything else going on in the world, is probably the most significant challenge from a foreign policy standpoint that we have right now. At least it's on par with what's happening in Ukraine.
Do you get the feeling that the Biden administration knows more than they are letting on about all of this?
No, and that's what's scary about it. You would think that, the fact that a balloon got this far without being spotted, winds up going across the country, we don't find out about it till it's over Montana, that's a problem.
But then these other 3.
Then these other 3 are private industry, et cetera. And, what we've learned is that our radars aren't checking this stuff out and being able to see it. We have the greatest military on the planet. And these balloons are flying without us knowing that they're there. That's a problem. I don't think the president has any reason to lie about this stuff. What would the point be?
Presidential politics now. A newly announced Republican candidate for president seems to be calling President Biden's mental abilities into question. Former South Carolina governor and UN Ambassador Nikki Haley officially threw her hat into the ring on Valentine's Day. Right off the bat, she's making an issue of the age of President Biden and also the age of former President Trump. Mr. Biden is 80, Mr. Trump 76. Haley is calling for mandatory mental competency testing for politicians ages 75 and over. Is she grandstanding, Michael, or is it time we talk about the elephant in the room when it comes to old politicians?
She's grandstanding. It doesn't matter who people choose to vote for. Look, we voted Donald Trump in as president. One would have to wonder if he was mentally sane, period. The reality is the voters have a say. This idea that we're going to put in these checks on folks is absurd, and this is nothing more than an attempt by a failing candidate to get some attention.
What do you think?
Well, I think it's too early to call her a failing candidate. Although I don't see a real lane for Nikki Haley here. She's going to try and stake out maybe the historic, traditional, conservative lane to run in. She probably won't be alone there by the time this whole field is settled. More concerning to me on Nikki Haley, it looks now increasingly like Republicans are going to have a multiple number of candidates in this presidential race. And at least in theory, that should benefit Donald Trump because he's got this loyal base of support behind him. And what concerns me about the Haley kickoff is that she was tiptoeing around Donald Trump. You want to talk about the elephant in the room? Donald Trump's the elephant in that primary room. And she was tiptoeing around him. She didn't take him on. The only way Donald Trump is not the nominee, in my opinion, is if all of these candidates that get in, these Republican candidates from Tim Scott to Mike Pompeo to Ron DeSantis and others, they need to go at Donald Trump and they need to collectively make a case to the Republican voters that Donald Trump's nomination would spell defeat in November of 24. And if they don't do that aggressively, and if they don't do it vociferously, Donald Trump's going to be the Republican nominee, and he's going to lose in 2024 to Joe Biden or whatever the Democrats cook up for president, and that would not be a good outcome for the country.
What about this idea of mental testing?
Yeah, no, I mean, whatever.
Nowhere really, right?
No, I don't. But it's an example of she's really talking about Biden, but she's also really talking about Trump.
Right.
But she's not really talking about Trump. And they're gonna need to go at Donald Trump and make the case for Republican voters that he's not our best choice.
They did that in 2016. One by one, the president systematically dismantled them. Donald Trump's more than likely going to be your nominee because even when you gang up on him, there's these 20 or 30% of the people who will follow him into whatever nonsense he takes.
Maybe. But in 2016, most of the field was coddling him or ignoring him, and one person would step up. Maybe it was Marco Rubio this week, and he's gone. Maybe it was Chris Christie, he's gone. It's Ted Cruz, he's gone. I'm suggesting that the entire field needs to make the case to the voters that he's not our best choice.
Well, former President Trump is claiming that a Georgia grand jury has given him total exoneration. He's talking about the grand jury's final report on whether the Trump campaign tried to illegally overturn Georgia's 2020 presidential election results. The report does not specifically say he's been exonerated. To the contrary, the grand jury believes one or more witnesses in the case committed perjury, and the grand jury urges prosecutors to bring charges. The specifics have not been made public here. Does that sound like a total exoneration, John? And also there's this Fox News stuff where the Fox News, Sean Hannity and company knew there was no election fraud, but they perpetuated this story.
Yeah, a lot going on here. So the last politician that claimed to be totally exonerated was Eric Greitens, if you'll remember that. We don't know enough about this grand jury case. I suspect there's probably not going to be any issue for Donald Trump coming out of the Georgia case. Whether somebody committed perjury, who knows? They had however many witnesses under oath there. The Fox News thing is interesting because Dominion is suing them for $1.6 billion. Dominion is the company that makes the voting equipment.
Right.
And they've got all of these emails and text messages from the opinion hosts on Fox, not the Fox News. And there really is a line between the news division at Fox and the opinion division.
And the talk show
Fox.
people, right.
Yeah. But the opinion people at Fox, talking about Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson, they all, in text and email messages, said that they knew that Sidney Powell was crazy and that Rudy Giuliani was crazy. They said it amongst themselves. And they also said that they knew that there was no way these machines were dissolving votes for Donald Trump and giving them to Joe Biden. And that's pretty potent. A libel case is extremely hard to win. But Dominion may have something here.
Well, the opinion hosts seem to have had a lot of influence because when the news side came out with a report showing that this was all a lie, it was Sean Hannity and Tucker, whatever his name is, that got that pulled down. So this idea that, Fox is half good, half bad, no way. They're carrying a narrative. And the narrative they were carrying is that the election was stolen. That was fraudulent. We're now seeing that proven in Atlanta or in Georgia. And I'm not sure the president is out of peril here.
I want you both to jump in on this, too. The RNC is going to vote this week on whether to require participants in the Republican presidential debates to sign a pledge to support the eventual nominee. Now, that is directed at Donald Trump,
Maybe.
no question, because he's already saying he doesn't know if he can support the eventual nominee if it's not him. Is that a good idea? Can they?
I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea for people to support the nominee if you possibly can. But is there a scenario where my party could nominate somebody that I couldn't support? Yeah, it's possible. And I don't know that that's a fair standard to put on people in that debate. I'd rather see the candidates debate than not. So, it'll be very interesting to see what the RNC does here.
Republicans have the best chance to win the White House that they've had in a long time. And they're having to go and corral everybody and say, hey, can't we all just get along? That's never a good side for the Republican Party, and there's no way they can enforce this. I think it's just a larger sign of the cleavage of normalcy and ridiculousness that exists inside the Republican Party.
The Biden administration is defending its response to a toxic train derailment in Ohio as the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, and EPA Chief Michael Regan find themselves on the hot seat. The derailment happened February 3rd. There were controlled burns in the days that followed, sending huge plumes of toxic smoke into the air. Those were done to prevent catastrophic explosions. Buttigieg has downplayed the incident. Regan toured the site, but not until 13 days after the derailment. He asked residents to trust their government, saying the air and water is safe. However, nearby streams have been contaminated. Thousands of fish are dying. Pets, livestock are getting sick. Should residents trust their government? John Hancock.
This is a tough one. And, more than anything here, it's clear to me these toxic chemicals that get transported, I'm sure, every day across this country by rail and by truck, need to have the strictest of government regulations. And you think about potentially, now there's, this, we still don't exactly know what caused this accident. It could have been the braking system on the train, could have been the track problem. But rail carry in this country is a prime target for terrorism. And when you consider the fact that these horrible chemicals are being transported, and we've got to do it, but man, it needs to be policed and protected.
So if the question is whether or not to trust your government, I'm from the Show Me State, and show me. Here we are in the midst of St. Louis.
Would you drink the water there?
Probably not. I mean, we had the Manhattan Project that took place here in St. Louis almost 6 decades ago, and we are still dealing with the consequences of it, the lack of the government's ability to clean it up, even saying, hey, everything's all right, and then we find out that that's not the case with schools. This has to be looked in. This is a larger problem that we're going to have going forward. And the reality here is this isn't something that's going away in a month or a year. This is decades and generations now in Ohio that will deal with the consequences of this.
I played Little League Baseball on a field that had all kinds of nuclear waste underneath it, and I turned out okay. Maybe.
Huh. Could explain a lot.
Still to come on Hancock and Kelley. The new #1 issue for Missouri Republicans appears to be reining in what they call the transgender agenda.